Hello class, Dr. Mike here. So we're looking at Linux Part 1. This is Chapter 9 in the text. So Part 1, you will see here, is really more about Linux, and it's about the desktop version of Linux. So, and also we're looking more at two sides of the house here. This lecture will be the GUI, the graphic user interface, or the GUI side, and the next one will be more under the hood with the command line. So Linux on the desktop, you might ask yourself, so why learn Linux? Maybe you have no interest in using Linux at home, and that's fine, but it is used in a lot of places. Um, if you want to work as a network engineer, uh, almost guaranteed that any of the switch and router information configuration might be done over the command line, which is a Linux-like environment. Even as you saw before, the Mac itself, if you use a Mac OS, you have an entire command line environment you can tap into. And also, it's a good option. You might not use it as a desktop or laptop for your daily driver, but it could be something as a server. Even simple things. So for example, the Raspberry Pi. If you've never seen those before, Raspberry Pi is a fantastic device. Small little computer board, a few different sizes. There's $35. You get a little computer that can run Linux, and it actually has access to a lot of these pins here. So great for hobbies. There's even a smaller version of this. It's the Pi Zero, and actually I run my own ad blocker network on my home network here. So little tiny device. Yep, a little thing. I run an ad blocking network, and it runs Raspbian, which is a Linux OS. So hobbies. If you're going to get into cybersecurity, definitely want to learn Linux. Kali Linux being the big one, but there's Backtrack Linux, ParrotSec, but a lot of tools run on Linux. So it touches a lot of places. Even as a developer, you might tell yourself, I'm just going to write HTML and CSS. You might find yourself having to deal with Linux still. So good to learn at least the basics. So there's some information about the history of it here. I won't go too much into it. There's actually an interesting thing though I will show you. That is here. I'm on Linux. In fact, here's my Pop OS system. And I use this as my daily teaching driver. So that's not there. I have a really interesting email from August 1995. So interesting little history here. This is Linus Torvalds. He really is sort of the one who stood Linux up and pushed the movement for Linux. So Linux and Unix are really sort of the same. They are different in some areas, and when you get to more distro-related stuff, and I'll talk about what distros are in a second. But back in the day, you had something called Minix. It was sort of a education version of Unix. Now, Unix is not free. HPUX, IBM AIX, Sun OS, these were big hitters in the Unix time. Unix is very expensive. You pay $45,000 for a license. You might get with the hardware on top of that. Very pricey and very proprietary. So this post here in 1995, August 1991, August 25th, was about I want to start a hobby. It won't be a big and professional like GNU. So this is a funny thing. Won't be big and professional. Well, little did he know, Linux did become big and very professional. In fact, today it runs most of the open source stuff runs on Linux. If you use Amazon Web Services, the cloud runs Linux not solely, but is a huge part of it. Also, web servers you're going to deal with are probably going to be HTTP, which is Apache web servers. So there's a lot of stuff that runs on Linux that runs our current way of life online right now. So it's funny how it went from a not a big deal, just a hobby thing to it's a huge deal now, and it's something you want to learn. So distributions. I mentioned the word distro, and like, so what is that? What is a distro? So Linux comes in a lot of flavors, a lot of them. So I'll see if I have the thing here. Um, the distros themselves are large. There's a lot of them, and oops, and there is a bunch of, if I have it online, distro. So distribution. So when you hear the term um, like Red Hat is a distribution of Linux, or you hear the term Kali, that is a distribution of Linux. So the kernel itself is very small. Linux is a modular operating system, where Windows is monolithic. It loads a lot of drivers it does not need, but because it has to be able to adapt to different types of hardware. Um, Linux is modular, so the kernel is very small, and you add on these services and binaries as needed. So it will load things it needs for your desktop, laptop, or server. And then you will also load whatever you think you need for the server itself, or it could be a desktop. Maybe you want a GUI running. Maybe you want a web browser and Office Suite. Maybe you want to do video production or do some gaming. There's actually gaming distros of Linux. Maybe you want to do cybersecurity, where you get something like Kali Linux here. So these are called distros. And the good place to start, if you're curious about where to start, is Distro Watch. So distrowatch.com. It's a great resource if you're just curious about what the top distros are. It is a little messy website, but you can see here what are the top ranking distributions here. Mint, Debian, Ubuntu. If you want to dip your toes in Linux, this class you'll do a little bit of it, of course, with the NetLab. But maybe Ubuntu, for example, it really is one of the larger distributions or distros. It's very user-friendly. Or maybe you want something a little different. Maybe you'll look at Mint Linux, also known to be very user-friendly. And they usually the links to the web pages for those. So a pretty handy page you can see here, and you can get to and look at and explore these. I would suggest installing Linux into a virtual machine if you just want to try it out. This way, you get a feel for the edition. Here's a user's guide, for example. You can play around with it, see if you don't want to make this your environment to use. Now, most user guides, most distros will have some sort of how to install it. So look for this distro information there. Distro Watch will guide you that too, give you information how to install it. Usually, you create a bootable DVD or bootable USB, plug that in, and install. So, in case Distro Watch, the term distro, and these distros have bundles in them. Some are made for security, like Kali Linux, have tons of hacking and security tools. There's certain bundles that have maybe graphic arts, things like that. And of course, we have bundles that are for desktops in general and also servers. The ones that run servers actually do not run a GUI. It's command line only most of the time. Actually, 90% of the time, you can see no GUI for a server. So let's keep that in mind. There are benefits, of course. The distributions, there's lots of them. You can find something you like, and you can really tweak it to what your liking is. More than Mac, more than Windows. It is pretty fast. It is pretty stable. It is pretty secure. Any OS could be insecure. So just keep that in mind. Don't think because you're on Linux, you're totally secure. Always have a hint of paranoia when dealing with your operating system. Now, here's a KDE on Fedora, for example. Speaking of GUIs, I will show you what I'm running here, of course. This is Pop! OS, and I'll show you the NetLab, which is Ubuntu, but I can't do the GUI show. There's too much to show and tell for GUIs, and in fact, if I have Pop! OS here running and you install Pop! OS on your own machine, it could look different. I can tweak my GUI to many, many lengths, and we can have the same exact distribution, yet look totally different and feel totally different too, how stuff launches, how stuff looks. So, but you'll get a sense there are these things called main drivers here. KDE is sort of like what makes the windows, how they look, what the menus look like, and there's several types of these. Um, you saw those here on Mint. There are several flavors um, of sort of the GUI itself. There's cinnamon, mate, XFCE. Some of these you're going to see are good for older hardware like this. XFCE is known to be a very sort of light GUI. It's good for maybe a 5-10-year-old laptop. Maybe not 10 years old, but you can actually run on a really, really minimal system. So you can breathe some life into an old hardware. So Mate also been known to be very lightweight too. So again, you can see 1 gig of RAM, 2 gig recommended. You can have a really low-end system with 20 gigs of hard drive space. Have a reasonably good operating system. That's what this KDE means. KDE is a sort of the GUI itself. There are different flavors of it. Unity is another one. So Unity, I think, has gone by the wayside, but Unity is what used to drive Ubuntu, and you'll see this in NetLab. So there are some drawbacks. There's really no central support. There's no one to call. Unless you get into enterprise level stuff with like Red Hat, you pay for support. Um, usually there's no support. So you go to the open source community, you look for help. So Google's going to be your friend. And it could be a lot of GUIs, and it could be a little confusing. You might spend more time playing with the OS than using it. Especially with Linux, you find yourself you have more options. There could be some limited software. I'll show you though. There's actually some good software alternatives you can find for known commercial software, and there could be some hardware support issues. Most modern Linux just distros with most modern, few years old laptop desktops will run fine. But it could be the odd case where you install Linux onto a laptop and the Wi-Fi doesn't work. So, and then with no central support, you find yourself, browsing the web looking to find out why it doesn't work and how do you fix it. And that's where complexity comes in. No matter how much I show you the GUI, the next lecture I do here will be about the command line. You're going to have to go into the command line. You got to understand a little more of your underlying operating system, what a kernel is, what a module is, installing stuff from the command line, and environment variables. This stuff just creeps in. It's hard to make this less complex. There are strives that make a very easy version of Linux, but honestly, there is some complexity that you're going to be encounter. So find software. So you see here in this slide here, Ubuntu actually has a software center. This is actually the good part about Linux. If I do this, if I do my Pop! OS, if I do the pop shop, you can see here, I can find software. Basically free software, games, graphics, media production. Maybe I want to do some media production. Audacity, that's actually a really good one for dealing with audio files, buzz tracks, music editors. Some of these should have hopefully a little screen cap. Yeah, fully integrated music composer. So you can really find a lot of free software to meet your needs. And this is just within the built-in app stores. There's Steam right there. So Office use. Most of the time, actually, you get with most distros LibreOffice, which is a totally compatible version of open source Office that works with Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Here's a Chromium web browser. So you do have alternate web browsers. Usually Firefox comes packaged with most of them. But in any case, I mean, development, if you're going to do some coding, there's a lot of stuff here. So again, a lot of good options with the Pop Shop or the Software Center or an app store. So let's talk about the desktop itself. So again, this will be a lot of different ways I'm going to show you, but I'm going to show you a few things that will usually work with most desktops, and this will allow you to get around and excuse me, and find files, work with files, and so on. So again, usually you get some software bundles, and you're really good to go with the bundles. Now, again, installing, look to the information from the distribution. This is where DistroWatch comes in. It might have the information for you, or have links to their website, and you can look at their installation information. But in general, is how it works. Find out about the distro you like. You download what's called the ISO file. And from this ISO file, you create a bootable disk or a bootable USB. So you need a computer to do this. Etcher, for example, is a great app that does this. Test it out, and then reboot your system with that plugged in, make sure it works, and you install it and work through the installation itself. After you install, there are going to be updates. Usually the App Store will have an updater, like my Pop Shop has an updater. There's also command line ways to do updates. Like in the OS, plan to take some time to get your stuff up and running. So again, exploring the GUI. Now again, we'll look at just a little bit of GUIs here. We'll look at NetLabs, which is what you'll see here with Ubuntu, and I'll show you some stuff here on my OS, Pop OS. But again, you can modify how stuff works. But normally, a lot of GUIs actually will have this top bar. At least Unity has this top bar for your menu, very similar to what we saw on Mac. There's a launcher. I'll show you my launcher here. And there's a search. This is actually going to be the great thing you use your search utilities to search your system. So before we go into the directories, let's look at what we have here. So first off, here we are. This is the desktop in NetLab. This is Unity Desktop. No surprise, you get like a little launch bar here on the side, which you can customize. Here's a software updater, for example. I can right-click on it. I can install updates, or I can lock to the launcher, or I can quit. Here's backups. Yeah, I don't want either. Let's quit. Let's want to find an app. You can see there's most applications here. Here's all applications on the bottom. Videos, text editor. Maybe I use a text editor a lot. So what I do is I want to right-click on this, and I want to lock to the launcher. And of course, I can move it around. And this really applies to most stuff. You can move stuff around, even on mine, by clicking and holding. So you have an editor. So gedit, for example. Let's go back, click on it, launch it. Now you'll notice the files, it's up here. File, the menu, file, edit, so on. Our regular menu is up on top, almost like a Mac. I will show you, you can on most Linux systems, you can do system settings. And this is going to be buried in different areas of your system. I'll show you where it's on mine here. I can change appearance, behavior, and say show the menu in the title bar. And now it's here. File, edit, and so on. So again, it's going to depend upon the flavor GUI, what it offers. Here we have Pop OS. This is my main system here. On the bottom of the screen, I have mine is hideable, and I can show all apps here. Normally, I search my apps here. So for example, there's an app called Tweaks. Usually GNOME Tweaks or GNU or usually called Tweaks app. Here I can change my desktop, where it shows. And then I have some called extensions here, dash to dock, and now which changes this. I want to make it show on all monitors. So if I have multiple monitors, on the what side of the screen I want it on, the size, the behavior, the appearance. So you can really get into the weeds here for managing, of course, your desktop. Of course, you can always right-click, and there's change background, display settings, or settings in general. So settings are here. Let's go here, background, for example. Now, in this version of Linux up here, I have a little click-on bar, and I have my Wi-Fi, a VPN, my account, which I can switch users and so on, power off my machine, sleep, lock it, or launch system settings, which we already are in. Again, use the search feature. I can add user accounts. About, you can see about my system. There's a new OS up. Actually, there's actually Pop! OS 19.10 is available. So I'll probably wait on that for a while. Breakout Bluetooth. So again, it's going to look different, and we'll see the settings panel. But this is really your control panel. Devices, for example. So printers, any tablets, firmware, my displays, and so on. So I do have a back button. I do have a minimize, maximize, and close. And then in this one, we have a little pop-out thing. It's going to depend upon your OS. So in this case, the Wi-Fi, they put it in the menu up here. I can turn off Wi-Fi or look for hotspots and so on. Look again. Here, this is Ubuntu. You can see here, system settings. So this has a little more of a control panel look than mine. That's annoying. Let's turn that off. Disconnect the Wi-Fi. That should go away. So if I can change the brightness, if I want to lock, don't lock the screen, never. There we go. If I come back to it, it won't block on us. Appearance. There we go. Put the cool background there. Behavior. Put that back in the menu bar. Displays, keyboard, mouse, pretty standard fare. There's a backup, built-in backup, which is nice. Not sure landscape service does, but user accounts. So again, here we can add accounts. We're going to come back to this, especially in the next part of this, part 2 of this series, because you're going to actually add an account. So system settings, definitely one of the main areas we want to look at. And of course, the big one is the file browser. This is what you use to look around, right? Pretty standard stuff here. Show it in different ways. And don't forget, you can go up here, copy items, paste, and there's preferences. So what view do you want to use by default? Zoom sizes, list column view, what things to show. Don't want to show previews, local files only, and so on. Again, Linux is going to give you every user a directory. So every system has, let's go to the computer, we have a set of directories here. So under the slash, I'm going to say /home, but that's what slash is right here. And we'll see this on the slides. This is the root directory /. Under /home, every user, in this case CIS student, has their own home directory that they have permissions to control and is locked down to them only. And of course, you can see here, we have standard fare folders, downloads, documents, desktop, and so on. And here, I have a secure area to keep my own documents. So it is the same thing here on my OS. I do have a, here we go. I have my own let's go to the computer here. This has 2 hard drives inside of it, but again here, I have slash, which is root, and there's home. You see here, there's my Dr. Mike, and there's 2 other accounts, one called ICI and a MySQL account. And it probably won't load because I don't have access to it. So it's secure. The root user. So root user. Root user is the administrator for Linux, where on Windows you have administrator, on Linux you have root. They have their own home directory. You see the little X here. It's locked down secure. So every Linux system has a root user by default. Again, you don't usually want to run as root. You run as a non-root user. In my case, Dr. Mike here, and you can see there are all my directories. And they're also on the side too. So documents, downloads, gotta clear that out, music, and so on, pictures, and then other stuff here. So we do have forward. This is called root slash root. I know we have root user. So there's a slash root directory, but slash is basically the main thing. So there's no C backslash, colon backslash users Dr. Mike. It's slash home Dr. Mike. So we have our own, each user has their home directory. So that's pretty important to know that. That'll come in the test. And you'll see here in this slide, you do have sort of a breakout. Linux is really broken out into smaller subdirectories. Most of the time you have like C Windows, System32 for all the Windows stuff with some other directories under slash Windows or C backslash Windows. Root is the top of everything. Binaries, this is where our kernel's at, the boot directory, all of our system information configurations and etc, etc, home. We have home here for all users. This is pretty important. This does come on the quiz questions and so on. So, and you can also create more than this too. And when you look at Linux later on in other classes, you see too, you can actually partition, have different partitions attached to different storage directories. So updating again, we have an update manager. Most of the modern OSs, modern distros have some way to actually pull for updates, which is great. Again, we looked at this already. Again, right-click on stuff. This is probably a big thing. Right-click on stuff. I'll show you here. RightClick Properties, right-click menus exist all over Linux also. It's a great way to get around. When you're done logging out, again, most of them have some sort of way to log out of the system or switch users or shut down. So in case, you can see here, I'll go back here. Now I'm going to go ahead and walk through a couple things here. This will help out with the lab. So I need to somewhere create a directory. And I'll do it here. Right click and then become folders here. We'll call it Linux. Right click, new folder. And then here I want to create a new file, a new document, new empty document. We'll call it CIS-1107 txt. There you go. So that is how you can create stuff in Linux with a right click. And you'll see here, if you right click on items, you get properties, just like we have in Windows. We're going to go into permissions in the next lecture video. However, just remember you can right click properties the same you can on Windows. And that should do it for this portion of part 1 of Linux. And I will the second part where we get into the command line real soon. Thanks.